Think of the last time someone tried to embarrass you in public, in front of your coworkers, your friends, or maybe even your family, and you stood there, mouth open, mind blank, heart racing, scrambling for the perfect response that never came. You walked away replaying that moment for hours, thinking of everything you should have said. And the person who attacked you? They walked away feeling powerful, because your silence was not calm, it was panic disguised as patience. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine standing completely still, looking that person directly in the eye, and delivering one short, controlled sentence that makes the entire room go quiet. Not because you were loud, not because you were aggressive, but because what you said was so precise, so psychologically loaded, that no comeback was even possible. What would that kind of control do for your life? In this video, I am going to give you 5 exact responses, tested against real situations involving coworkers who undermine you, friends who disrespect you, and strangers who try to make you look small in front of others. These are not comebacks. These are psychological tools built on Stoic philosophy and behavioral science. Method 3 alone will completely change how people read your silence. Method 5 will make you feel a shift in your identity that stays with you long after this video ends. Stay until the end, because the last one is the one most people are never taught, and it is the reason they keep losing situations they should be winning. Here's the hidden truth that almost nobody talks about. When someone challenges you, your brain interprets it as a threat, and it immediately pushes you toward reaction, toward defending yourself, explaining yourself, or matching their energy. And the moment you react emotionally, you have already lost. Not because your argument is weak, but because emotion signals vulnerability, and vulnerability signals that they found the target. The most powerful thing you can do in a confrontation is not to out-argue the person, it is to out-calm them. Power does not live in the loudest voice in the room. Power lives in the most controlled one. Most people think silence is weakness. The Stoics knew that silence, used correctly, is the most dominant weapon in any social situation. What you are about to learn is not how to win arguments. It is how to make arguments unnecessary. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in human history, wrote in his private journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He did not write this for the public. He wrote it as a personal reminder to himself, an emperor who commanded armies, yet constantly trained himself to respond rather than react. Epictetus, who was born a slave and became one of the greatest philosophers of all time, taught that the only true freedom a man has is the freedom to choose his response. And Seneca warned that the man who cannot control his tongue and pressure is a man who has handed his power to someone else. These were not theories. These were survival strategies. And they still work today. Response 1. The pause that speaks louder than words. Most people fail here immediately. The moment they feel attacked, they rush to speak. The panic of silence feels unbearable, so they fill it with noise, and the noise makes them look rattled. Here's what the Stoic response looks like instead. When someone challenges you, whether it is a dismissive comment in a meeting or a public jab from a colleague, you stop. You breathe. You look at them for exactly 3 to 5 seconds without speaking. Then, calmly and deliberately, you say, "That's an interesting perspective. Let me think about that." Nothing more. That response does something most people never expect. It removes you from the game entirely. They were expecting a reaction. You gave them reflection. And reflection reads as power. They suddenly become unsure whether they have offended you, impressed you, or simply bored you. That uncertainty, that is control. Comment below if you have ever been in a room where someone's silence made you nervous. Response 2. Redirecting disrespect without engaging it. Do you ever notice how the person who takes the bait in an argument always ends up looking smaller, regardless of whether they were right? Here is why. When you engage disrespect directly, you validate it as worthy of your energy. The Stoic method is to redirect, not to deflect. When someone says something dismissive or condescending toward you, look at them calmly and say, "I appreciate you sharing that. I see things differently, but I respect where you're coming from." Then stop talking. Do not explain. Do not justify. Most people are expecting a war, and you just handed them a door and walked away from it. The psychological impact is significant. You have positioned yourself as someone too elevated to need their approval. And at the same time, you have not been rude, which means they have no ammunition to use against you. Don't ignore this. It is one of the most misunderstood tools in social dynamics. Response 3. The question that reverses the power. This is the one that changes everything. When someone attacks your decision, your work, your character, and they do it in front of others, your instinct is to defend yourself. But defense is surrender in disguise because it puts you on trial. Instead of defending, ask a question. Look at them and say, with full calm, no sarcasm, no hostility, "What outcome were you hoping for by saying that?" Watch what happens. Suddenly they are the one who must explain themselves. Suddenly they are in the position of justifying their behavior. The entire dynamic flips in 3 seconds. You went from accused to examiner without raising your voice, without being aggressive, without even being unkind. Epictetus called this kind of response the art of turning the arrow around. You are not throwing it back, you are simply showing them what they fired. Most people will not have an answer, and their silence will say everything yours did not need to. Response 4. Agreeing in a way that disarms completely. Here is a psychological truth that sounds counterintuitive. The fastest way to end a power struggle is to agree. Strategically. When someone criticizes you publicly, trying to make you look incompetent or foolish, the last thing they expect is agreement. So when they say, "You always overthink everything," instead of defending yourself, you look at them and say, "You might be right. I do take my time with things that matter." You have just taken their weapon and made it a compliment. You have agreed with their words while reframing their meaning entirely, without lying, without being aggressive, without losing a single ounce of dignity. The room hears confidence. The attacker hears that their ammunition did not land. And the conversation ends because there is nowhere for them to go. This is what Marcus Aurelius practiced, absorbing pressure without being shaped by it. Subscribe if you want more of this. There are things coming in future videos that go even deeper. Response 5. The identity statement that ends all games. This is the most powerful one. And it is the one that separates men who react from men who lead. Soft question for you. When is the last time you responded to someone, not from your wounds, but from your values? When the situation is most heated, when someone is pushing hardest, the Stoic master does not match the pressure. He states who he is, calmly, clearly, without apology. Look at the person and say, "I don't operate from that place. I choose my responses, not my reactions." Then go quiet. What you have done is something deeply psychological. You have declared an identity. You have drawn a boundary, not with walls, but with character. And people respond to identity statements the way they respond to authority, with a sudden, involuntary pause. This phrase works in arguments, in boardrooms, in family confrontations, in moments where everything in you wants to explode. It is not just a phrase. It is a declaration of who you have chosen to become. Imagine walking into tomorrow, into your workplace, your social circle, your difficult relationships, carrying these 5 tools. Not as tricks, not as manipulation, but as an expression of who you genuinely are becoming. A man who chooses his words like a surgeon, chooses his instruments, precisely, intentionally, and only when necessary. If this is resonating with you, hit subscribe right now because every week this channel releases Content built specifically for men who are choosing to build this kind of inner authority. Let's lock these in. The pause that speaks louder than words. Use it before you say anything. The redirect that avoids the trap. Appreciate and disagree without justifying. The question that reverses the power. Ask them what outcome they wanted. The agreement that disarms. Take their weapon and reframe it as a strength. The identity statement that ends all games. Declare who you are, not what they made you feel. These are not 5 responses. These are 5 expressions of the same truth, that a controlled man is an untouchable man. Repeat them until they become instinct. Because the goal is not to remember what to say. The goal is to become someone who naturally speaks this way without effort, without rehearsal, and without fear. You started this video as someone who wanted better answers. But here is what I want you to understand before you leave. The answers were never the real problem. The real issue was that you had not yet decided who you were in moments of pressure. And that decision, that quiet, private decision to become a man of controlled response, rather than emotional reaction, that is where everything changes. Not loud, not aggressive, not performing strength for others. Just still, just calm, just present. That is the Stoic identity. That is the version of you that silences rooms without speaking, leads people without demanding, and earns respect without chasing it. That version of you already exists. You are just choosing to step into him now. Comment below and tell me, which of these 5 responses are you going to use first? I read every comment and I want to know where you are starting. If this video gave you something real today, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Share this with someone who needs it. See you in the next one.